Welcome to today's webinar, everyone. My name is Catherine Carlton. I'm Executive Director of Orchestras Canada, Orchestras Canada. OC is a virtual organization, and we work where we live. My office and my home are located in Peterborough, Nogujiwanong, Ontario, on lands covered by the Rice Lake Agreement of 1818 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. Something that occurs to me as I honor the land that I work on today is that concepts of stewardship of these lands and water and concepts of care for all beings, indeed all our relations, and the imperative to think of the impact of our actions in terms of 7 generations. All these are embedded in Indigenous teachings. I am grateful for these teachings and committed to honoring them, and they're fundamental to our emerging understanding about eco-sustainability too. A reminder that today's session will be recorded and made available on OC's website soon. We're using the chat box to capture questions and comments on the presentation today, and our guests, Richard and Tanea, will be addressing them after the presentation. Second slide, please. But actually, before I even address what's here, I'll introduce Richard Phillips and Tanea King of Julie's Bicycle. Richard is a consultant and facilitator for sustainability in the music sector at Julie's Bicycle. He provides climate and environmental expertise across the breadth of live and recorded music, from festivals to venues, to record labels, management teams, and touring. Tanea joined Julie's Bicycle in 2024 as a climate change and sustainability specialist, and she supports the Creative Green program. She brings 6 years of experience in the environment and sustainability sector and is passionate about using connection and community to enable climate resilience and justice. She previously worked for Green Music Australia, focusing on the sustainability of the Australian music scene. Our work with these talented people and their colleagues at Julie's Bicycle has come about through the support of the Canada Council for the Arts and the inspiration provided by my participation in 2022 in the Center for Sustainable Practices Creative Climate Leadership Program, presented in collaboration with Julie's Bicycle at stunning Kananaskis, Alberta. I will now pass the mic to Richard and Tanea.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for the introductions. So I had the pleasure of working on this project alongside Catherine, Lauren Boran, and others within the steering committee to develop a guide and a charter for the orchestra sector in Canada. Why are we doing this? Why did we decide to do this project in collaboration? Why now? There are many answers to these questions, but put simply, over 3 in 4 Canadians are worried about climate change. We know it is affecting us right now. So that's 75% are concerned, according to a 2023 study. And on top of that, there are 4 in 5 Canadian CEOs who have expressed concern recently and saying that they've been personally affected by the changing climate. I think we can all see that it's happening in the here and now and not in the long-term, distant future. On top of this, we conducted a survey of the sector and heard from you all to get your opinions on the orchestra sector role within climate change. And what we got from that, we heard 70% of you think that orchestras have a role to play through reducing impacts to having a positive influence on your audience, many of whom may indeed be change makers and can do something within their own lives and within the organizations that they work within to create wider sector change. And then thirdly, we know that there are benefits. This is not just the right thing to do. There are tangible outcomes that can benefit orchestras in the here and now, from reduced costs gained from efficiencies through to new ideas for concepts and for commissioning, as well as engaging new audiences who have been shown to care more about environmental action than the general public, according to a study by the University of Glasgow and Music Declares Emergency, a not-for-profit working on eco-sustainability within music. And there are also other benefits around positive press coverage and innovation within operations as well. So the heart and the mind is there. There are reasons that all sectors and including the classical music sector, must take action. And this is why Orchestras Canada embarked on this journey alongside Julie's Bicycle to develop a guide and charter to guide action within our sector. So the aims of this project were to deliver the first bespoke environmental action guide for Canadian orchestras, to build awareness of the role that orchestras can play in tackling environmental issues, to galvanise collective action behind a co-created national sector-wide charter. And ultimately, all of these things, the guide and the charter and the webinar series, was to strengthen the resilience of our sector in the face of a changing world. And that resilience is not just about taking environmental actions, but it's about the financial sustainability and the financial resilience and the operational resilience going forward. Catherine, would you like to give a word of thanks to our steering committee who guided this project?
Absolutely. Um, so one of the things that I've really adored about this process has been the level of consultation and discussion that I think it's engendered, not just visits by Richard to various peer group meetings that we regularly host, but also a lot of interaction with a very active steering committee. And I'd just like to pay tribute to the following folks who were part of the consultation process through their service on the steering committee. They include Rich Coburn of BIPOC Voices, formerly of the National Arts Center Orchestra, Simon Ouellet, formerly of the Orchestre Symphonique de Laval and now at the National Arts Center Orchestra, Marcus Goddard, trumpet player and composer with the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, and Riley Dupuis, executive director of the Thunder Bay Symphony Orchestra. Each one of you, in your own way, made a strong contribution to the work, and it wouldn't have been the same without you. Thank you. Them. Back to you, Richard.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. So what went into the creation of these set of resources, the guides and the charter? Well, these resources have been co-created with you all representing the sector. We didn't want to create this in a vacuum and then hand it back. This was very much co-created. And we did this through a number of engagements across the last 12 months to hear your thoughts, all of which was to ensure that the documents would be as useful and practical as possible. So a quick recap of our engagements with you. First of all, we ran a sector survey. We had a fantastic response to that, and it explored current practices, challenges that you might be facing, and new ideas for environmental action. And this informed our approach to the guide and its content, making sure we addressed what was needed, as well as highlighting case studies of current best practices. And it also informed our webinar series, which I'll come to in a second. We also ran peer meetings with CEOs of small, medium, and major-sized orchestras, again, to understand the nuances in more detail in terms of the varying levels of ability to take action, as well as priorities and particular challenges that affect all of these sizes of orchestra. So it was all to hear from your perspectives on what was possible for eco-sustainability within your orchestra. We also ran one-to-one interviews with sustainability leaders. So we spoke with those who were already making change happen on the ground. That included Sinfonia Toronto and Orchestra de l'Agora, and we thank both of them for their time within those interviews. And the outcome of those conversations was really to unpick how certain actions can be done with regards to eco-sustainability, to take learnings for other orchestras, so to share the learnings that these leading organizations have been able to achieve with eco-sustainability. We, as Catherine just mentioned, we had a steering committee that shaped this project throughout and provided their advice and feedback, which was invaluable to the process. And finally, we ran a webinar series. So this was a three-part educational series on the role of orchestras in taking environmental action. We did a deep dive into rehearsals and concerts, as well as effective communications with your audience. And you can still revisit these webinars online. So what all of this has built towards, well, we are thrilled to present to you the end result of this project, which is an environmental practical action guide and an environmental charter for the sector. I believe both of these will be dropped into the chat. To take you through the practical action guide, first of all, this provides clear steps your orchestra can take to improve sustainability. This has been specifically designed to be easy to use. It is to the point. It lays suggested actions out in a table format across three different levels of difficulty. It is relevant for all types of orchestra in Canada, from the very largest to the very smallest, across all 10 provinces and three territories. The suggested actions are relevant for anyone working within an orchestra. So that could be musicians, that could be staff members, volunteers, board members, or promoters. It also provides an indication of the time and financial input that might be needed. So it provides you with an indication of any cost that might be incurred from implementing an action. And importantly, it also highlights the benefits of taking each action. So, as we've mentioned in the session already, in most cases, there are mutual financial and operational benefits from taking eco-sustainability action. And within this guide, each suggested action lays out the benefits that can be brought to your orchestra. The guide covers all the relevant areas that make up the eco-sustainability journey for an orchestra. These are laid out on the screen here. So we have recommendations relating to leadership and management, commissioning, programming and events, buildings, programs and promotional materials, waste, and different travel-related impacts, and so on. And of course, depending on the context of your orchestra, some areas may be less relevant to you. For example, your orchestra may not tour, or your orchestra may not have any influence with the way that your building is managed. But this guide has been specifically designed to be something that you can continually refer to. It's something that you can dip in and out of rather than feeling like you need to read this end to end, although we do encourage you to engage with this deeply. So I'll now hand over to Tanea, who will go through how to use the guide in a little more detail.
Thanks, Richard, and hello, everyone. So, as Richard mentioned, the actions that we've suggested in the guide, we split them into three broad levels to make it easy to understand the relevance or where you might want to aim for. So, the most appropriate actions will really depend on your sort of the unique context of your orchestra. So, where you're located, the time you have, the funding you have, maybe the steps that you've taken already, and as well, your orchestra's sort of level of maturity might differ across different activities. So you might be quite advanced in waste, for example, but maybe you're just getting started with energy. So it's very much a guide, and you can sort of assess where you are as you read through each chapter. So obviously, getting started, the actions are designed to be easier to implement, usually within your direct control, and are really the foundations for future progress. The intermediate actions are a bit more of a stretch. They might have greater positive impact and potential returns. They might require a bit of influence of other stakeholders that you work with. And then advanced tend to be more powerful, or they support others to create change. And the aim there is for those wanting to be environmental leaders. But definitely note that some low cost and simpler actions can still make a really big difference. So there's definitely a lot of potential there, depending on where you feel like you sit and where you feel like you might like to aim for. So thank you. Maybe just one more slide. Yeah, perfect. So each suggested action has been ranked for the likely cost and potential positive environmental impact. And the exact cost and impact will really depend on your orchestra. So this is very much a estimation or something that's just to give you an idea, and it can really differ depending on what resources you have available. Maybe you might completely disagree, or you might find that you make a much bigger impact than you realize, depending on the potential scale. But it's just to help you sort of prioritize something that might really, realize it's actually low cost than you think, or something that has a bigger impact that you might not realize when you first look into it. So the next slide, this is just an overview of the guide, what's in the guide. It's in English, sorry, but it's just for the first section, leadership and management, across the three areas of getting started, intermediate and advanced. There's the particular actions that we've suggested, and you can see the dollars and the leaf scale there. And if you click on the links, it'll jump down to the relevant section. So the next slide will show, if you click on one of those links, it jumps down to the detailed guidance. So each suggested action, we have the description of the action, which links to the resources and how to do that action, the social, financial, and strategic benefits, the potential cost, as we've talked about, and the potential positive impact. So this one is for researching and programming repertoire that relates to environmental themes. It talks about classical declares and has that link to that program, and some of the benefits that we've identified is, some new ideas or drawing in new concert goers, or an opportunity to collaborate with different people. So we've also got some case studies. There's a lot of really wonderful orchestras and individuals that are already doing great work in this space. Some of whom are hopefully on the call, or watching today. But we have so Against the Grain during COVID did a video performance of Handel's Messiah for contemporary audiences, and it includes performance by two Inox singers, which was a really interesting look into decolonizing classical music, which is often less representative of Indigenous voices, depending on sort of the organisations and how Indigenous voices are worked with and platformed. So we have additional resources for them too, which for that area as well, which the Orchestras Canada has done quite a bit of work with. Magnificent Roots is another one which takes inspiration from the city's oldest tree, which has been the subject of a local preservation campaign. Gala de la Terre, which has raised over 500,000 for environmental causes, and the event is with environmentally conscious programming and production practices, Indigenous collaboration, and orchestral innovation. And then Kindred Spirits in Toronto became the first in Canada to go paperless in 2021, saving an average of 20,000 sheets of paper annually. And we have a few more. So back to the symphony in Edmonton, which was a really fun campaign to give audience members the chance to cycle with musicians and have a reduced ticket price. And the Reducing Travel Impacts case study is about working with a UK-based music director to reduce transatlantic flights by scheduling longer visits, which reduces overall travel impacts and improves quality of life as well. And the Slow Touring project is working to tour slower by increasing community engagement and reducing the climate impact of touring. So overall, there's a lot of inspirational case studies to help illustrate different orchestras that have already done this or are working on this, which is great to sort of get started with ideas. So the key principles that we'd love everyone to keep in mind when you're using the guide, and for any sort of sustainability work in general, is to really embrace imperfection. It's not a live performance, and definitely don't be afraid to experiment and test and get things wrong as you work. The small can still be mighty, which is taking action now, no matter how small the first step is, because it really helps to get started. Collaboration is key. Lots of actions could be tackled with other orchestras or other stakeholders. There's never an end point to sustainability where you can perfectly say, like, we've done it, we've crossed it off the list. So with that, you want to do things with people along the way, because if you just wait until some future endpoint where you finally share what you're doing with everyone else, you won't really get there, because it's always a sort of cycle of continuous improvement. So we really encourage you to collaborate with others um, as you continue this work, and then use your influence, which is, orchestras can have a really positive impact through inspiring audiences, not just minimizing the negative impacts of potential environmental impacts. So definitely think about how you can use your influence and influence, yeah, all different types of audiences that you might have exposure to through lots of different platforms, including, your social media or your performances themselves. I'll hand over to Richard to talk about the accompanying charter.
Thank you, Tanea. So that was a really quick run through of all of the content that's in the guides. It is a very rich document, and you can dip in and out of it, refer to it when you're building your strategy and thinking about certain actions that you can take, of course, related to particular areas. So do take a look at it. There's an enormous amount of really, really helpful advice laid out in the most straightforward and hopefully the clearest way possible, so that we don't lose people within the detail, because sustainability can get complicated quickly. So hopefully it really works as a simple guide, a how-to guide really, that you can continually refer to. So the second piece of what we're launching today is the Environmental Charter for Canadian Orchestras as well. So the charter is a simple 5-page document setting out some key commitments as an organisation operating in the classical music sector. The charter links directly to the guide itself, so these two items very much go hand in hand. The commitments within the charter align with the actions included in the guide. So this means essentially that you can make a commitment that's included in the charter and then immediately see how you can achieve that commitment by referring to the guide. And in fact, they're so aligned and so hand in hand that one of the commitments within the charter is to take at least one action from the guide. So these very much go as a pair. Another important thing to say about the charter is that we've built this very much with the understanding that orchestras are at different points in the journey. So the charter is intended to reflect this. There are different levels of ambition, and you can revisit it to increase your ambition year on year. So again, this charter is designed to reflect all orchestras within Canada, whether you're a small orchestra or a large orchestra, whether you're in an urban setting or a rural setting. This is really for everyone. The principles of the charter refer to these 4 areas here of commit, measure, communicate, and improve. So these are the areas in which the charter is broken down into, and there are headline commitments underneath each of these. And Catherine's going to talk you through those in just a second. Just to highlight what we mean by these 4 areas, the commitments under the commit heading are really things relating to activities at a senior level. So these are things about governance, things like developing an environmental plan, identifying priority areas, those sort of strategic elements to taking action. Then measure is about building a way to evaluate your progress. Very often when we talk about measurement and eco-sustainability, we think of carbon footprints. This is brilliant if you're able to do a carbon footprint, but that might not be possible for all because of the resources required for that and the knowledge required for that. If you're in a position to do a carbon footprint, then fantastic, but there can be other ways in which you can track your progress. So we're accounting for that. Improving is about picking the actions from the guide to work on year. So you can build up against those scales of maturity that Tanea just went through, from beginner right through to advanced. So you can continually refer to the guide and improve the actions that you're taking each year. And then finally, communicate. So making sure that as an orchestra, you're talking about what you're doing, both to your internal stakeholders, so your staff and your board, as well as your external stakeholders, so artists, as well as your audience, of course, as well, and bringing them along the journey. This is not intended to be a cycle of commit, measure, communicate, improve. Of course, in general, we start with making a commitment. but really each four of these move as one. So you should be measuring your progress as you're implementing actions, and you should always be communicating what you're doing. So as I say, it's a very simple document setting out key objectives across each of these four areas. And once again, they've been co-created with the sector and tested with the steering committee as well to make sure that these are striking the right note and are meeting a balance between ambition as well as what is realistic and what is practical as well with the resources and all of the challenges that orchestras in today's context face. I'm going to hand back now to Catherine to go through what those commitments are for the classical music sector in Canada.
Absolutely. So I'll just say a word to bridge from what Richard was just discussing. What we really wanted to do was to frame a commitment that we were asking Canadian orchestras to take on as a way of starting a conversation inside their organizations and outside their organizations as well. One of the things that I think we all recognized in doing the consultation work was that the level of personal commitment on the part of stakeholders in the Canadian orchestral community is very high, but there sometimes, in certain circumstances, has been a little bit of a block between one's personal commitment and one's ability to actually work within and around an organization to drive the kind of change that one might personally want to see. So by framing a charter and putting it forward as something that we're asking orchestras to read, study, discuss, and sign off on, we're really encouraging you to use this as a starting place, if it is a starting place for you on your own eco-sustainability journey. And it starts with the commitment. We commit to embedding eco-sustainability within our orchestra. That's a bold statement. It's not a statement that one person alone can make. It's a commitment that needs to be discussed and taken on by a group. That's the management team, if that's the board of directors, if that's the musicians, if that's the folks working backstage, ideally all of them, but that's the starting place. The second one has to do with the concept of improvement, which Richard has addressed. We commit to taking actions that improve the eco-sustainability of our orchestra over time. And again, I think it also reflects some of the things that Tanea was saying about if we only start when we're perfect, then we may never get going. Let's start today. Next slide, please. Measurement is obviously, how do we know that we're making progress? How do we know that the changes are worth it? To the notion of understanding and evaluating our eco-sustainability performance in the best and most appropriate way for us. We know that there are existing carbon measurement tools. Some of them are quite complicated, but we do encourage some form of measurement, and we can push you towards some of the available tools for you to make your own decisions there. In terms of communication, orchestras are organized to communicate things to groups of people. And this idea of including the eco-sustainability commitments and efforts in communications with key stakeholders, whether that's internal, whether that's external, is something that we are absolutely recommending that orchestras that sign off on this take on. Next slide, please. So it's not just noble phrases, noble sentences. There is a series of steps and actions that can be taken under each one of the commitments. And obviously, we've got a few examples here. Reviewing and adopting the charter with our board and or senior management, communicating with artist staff and or volunteers. I think this is super important because, again, this should not be, it can start from personal commitment. It cannot stay purely at the personal level. It's something that we're inviting you to share with organizational stakeholders to embed that practice. So it's beyond a single advocate. Can start with the advocate, needs to move on to a bit more of a broader movement. And again, each one of these areas, each one of these subcommitments has a number of details. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, this is something that we have framed for your use. We invite you to join the community of orchestras who are taking environmental action, who sign off on the charter and commit to moving step by step towards eco-sustainability from your starting place to the wonderful place you'll wind up. And I think that's it from me. And I also note that we've embedded QR codes on the screen. Lauren did insert some links to the materials that are now posted on our website. I do want to pay tribute to the Government of Canada through the Department of Canadian Heritage for helping to support dual language services, providing the materials, the charter, and the guide in both English and French, as well as helping to cover the cost of simultaneous interpretation for the webinar series that we've done. So the guide and the charter are there. Please, we invite you to download them. We invite you to start using them, start asking questions, and sustain the conversation within your organization. I know that at Orchestras Canada, we are super keen to share more examples of the work that you're doing, the explorations that you're embarked on, and that will be something we will be embedding in the agendas for upcoming peer group meetings and regularly reporting on in our newsletter as well. I would not be doing my job if I didn't also underline the fact that we're here to ask questions, and we have Richard and Tanea with us for just a brief period of time. Today, the contract is done. It's been a complete thrill to work with them. But if you've got questions, we've got time for questions. Please use the chat box to pose your questions, and we'll get expert responses. Or is everybody just so busy downloading the guides right now that there's nothing to say? Okay, we're getting some praise here, a few bits of love. And thank you so much for that. Very much appreciate it. And I know that there are a number of environmental leaders on the call today already, so super exciting to see that. Okay. My goodness, I think I should have prepared some questions, changed my name, and pretended that I was posing this. Richard, let me ask a question to you and to Tanea. I'm well aware that my first experience of a Green Orchestras guide was actually courtesy of some work that Julie's Bicycle did back in 2010 or 2011 for the Association of British Orchestras. I'm interested if you've been marinating in that guide as well as the work that you've done on this one, what kinds of differences you see between the UK orchestras and their practices and what you are observing in Canada. Is the guide different? And if so, how, why? Talk amongst yourselves.
Sure, it's a great question. Yes, the guide that Julie's Bicycle put together with the Association of British Orchestras way back in 2010, I think it was 2011, was the basis for this updated version. Of course, that was built with the context of the UK and Europe, in which there's a lot of touring among orchestras. And the first conversation that we had, Catherine, was that that's not always the case with orchestras within Canada. And also in terms of ownership and leverage with the buildings that performances take part in as well. So immediately there were some adaptations to make for the context of orchestras within Canada. But not only that, there was a lot of, I guess, updating and bringing into 2025 that we needed to do. We're in a different operating context now. So there were a number of updates there. I believe that there was quite a focus on physical promotional activities, which still take place now, but of course things have moved way more online. So there was a part to address within that. And then I think our approach has evolved as well. At Julie's Bicycle, we're very focused on environmental justice. which is essentially making sure that we're entering into our work with the understanding that climate change and environmental impact affect people differently and that solutions must be available for all. So that was very much an approach which has evolved and developed in our thinking within our projects over time. And we entered this project through that lens. So we had multiple conversations as part of the steering committee and through our engagements and also through the webinar series to explore that in more detail and what that means again for Canada. So this was certainly our basis, but we made it very specific to the operating context that you all have as orchestras in Canada.
It's been confirmed that was 2010. Jack from the Association of British Orchestras is with us. And so we'll accept that as 2010 was the birthday of the guide. I do remember reading the guide, being tremendously excited in 2010 when it was released, and I also found myself wincing, if not actually weeping, at one of the recommendations. It was talking about tour scheduling and trying to schedule your tours in a way that would enable you to take the train to as many of your touring venues as possible. And even in 2010, that was a limiting option when it came to touring in Canada, the scale of activity just being what it is. But just interesting. I think one of the other things that I will be thinking about is also the work that we tried to do in this guide to ensure that there were entry points for people at all stages of the journey. And the term of art used in the guide is maturity, but it's really finding a foothold for groups that are very new to this work and to these conversations, and to groups who are more fluent and have already done some testing. Now, I do see we have a question from Caro. Very inspiring work. Are there plans for monitoring uptake and commitments made through the charter? I am interested from our perspective at Culture for Climate Scotland. We have a Green Arts Charter that our Green Arts Initiative members across Scotland are invited to sign up to. We try to work with how we maintain engagement through our training workshops. I suppose I'm curious about ongoing engagement plans. Will there be an active community of practice around the Charter? And I think that's probably a question for Orchestras Canada more than Julie's Bicycle. One of the things that I've certainly learned in starting to think about this work is that if we try to do it as Orchestras Canada only, we may not have the critical mass necessary, but it is absolutely my intention to not only foster the conversation through the peer group meetings that we are having here at OC, but also to engage with organizations like Scale, to see what we can do to plug orchestra's work into the work that the Scale organization is doing as well. So I think it'll be a combination of orchestra-only efforts, but also trying to put those in the context and the support networks that already exist across the arts sector. But I think the maintenance of the development of a community of practice is not something to be entered into lightly. I think we're passionately committed to endeavoring to keep this going, but also to connect the people with questions and ideas with a broader network of practitioners across the arts sector in Canada. So great question from Scotland. Thank you very much. Okay. So it's one of those things where I always think we should have Jeopardy music playing or something so that we can give people the time to raise their hands and do some thinking. But I think what I'm detecting is that there's already a lot of action on downloading the guide and the charter, and that this is the beginning of the next stage of our work on eco-sustainability for and with Canadian orchestras. And on behalf of everyone who's here today, I think I'd just like to thank you all very much for taking part. I'd like to thank the team from Julie's Bicycle for all that they have brought. I think the commitment to climate justice, the humility that you have brought to learning about the context of orchestras in Canada, your patience as you've worked with us through this really interesting process, and the incredible quality of the work that you've done for us, which I think is practical, accessible, and eminently useful. So Tanea and Richard, on behalf of the entire OC team, thank you so much. And I think that brings us to a close today. I will draw your attention once again to the notes in the chat from my colleagues, both the links to the guides and charters in both official languages, as well as links to our YouTube channel, where the 3 webinars that we presented as part of this project are hosted. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to Isabella, who's our simultaneous interpreter, and thanks to our funders. Thanks to you. I can't wait for the work to get started. Have a great day, everyone. Bye now.
Thanks to you, and thanks to everyone else, Catherine.